I'll tell you what, when you're a large individual and you're weighing 799 pounds at 16 years old, life's gonna throw all sorts of thoughts at you, right? It's like, am I gonna live? Am I gonna have a girlfriend one day? Am I gonna have children
Mm.
one day? Am I gonna have a job one day? Am I still gonna make the NFL? All those questions that will go through your mind. And I really had to come to a place in my own life that I had to accept if I live or die, I need to do something about my body because there's no way I could continue doing this.
Welcome to Healthcare Liberty Labs with Tiffany Ryder, where we teach you what they don't want you to know about healthcare.
I just couldn't not have you on to talk about your story. I think, for anyone who isn't familiar with your story or perhaps hasn't read your book or listened to your podcast, um, Justin found a way early in life, in adolescence, it sounds like, to lose over 600 pounds. And here we are 20 years later, and you look great and you're inspiring people to do the same thing. And I just think that requires such mental stamina. I mean, certainly it requires some physical things as well, but just the type of person, the type of mindset that you have to have cultivated to get yourself in that position is fascinating to me. And so I'm just really looking forward to learning from you and hearing more about what that process looked like.
Sure. And it was a process, like you said. It wasn't an easy overnight change. It was a lifestyle determination that motivated me to become the healthiest me. And starting out with this whole thing, I mean, I'll tell you what, when you're a large individual and you're weighing 799 pounds at 16 years old, life's going to throw all sorts of thoughts at you, right? It's like, am I going to live? Am I going to have a girlfriend one day? Am I going to have children
Mm.
one day? Am I going to have a job one day? Am I still going to make the NFL? All those questions that will go through your mind. And I really had to come to a place in my own life that I had to accept if I live or die, I need to do something about my body because there's no way I could continue doing this. And at 16, I was able to think that through. Now, I do have a faith that really helped me through the process. Like I had to find this this exploration of faith where like Jesus became like everything to me at this point because I was losing my life and I wasn't doing the best in my life. And so why not give it to someone who could? So that changed my perspective on life. And then now I can be motivated to say, since I have value and I'm worth it and I'm supposed to live here, I'm going to put passion and pursuit into that. And that's when I started making changes, but they were extremely difficult to make.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, and not to make light at all of the situation that you found yourself in, but like, I can't get my kids to do the dishes, right? Or like go to bed on time. The concept of thinking about, a young man at that age dealing with what I can only imagine is a ton of stress, and kids are not nice humans often. I just can't imagine that it was easy to be a 16-year-old in that position, and to be able to find a path and find the motivation to move forward is astounding. Um, I'd love to, we're in this place now where we're talking about GLPs and, should we be prescribing Ozempic to 12-year-olds? And, I have my own conservative thoughts about, medically conservative thoughts about giving drugs to, children. But I understand the desire to help people. I understand that it's really challenging, and for a child, it must be even more traumatic. Talk to me, tell me a little bit about how you think you ended up in the position that you were in, and and then sort of what clicked to change to get you out of it.
Yeah, that's good. And as far as and I'll answer that question, but as far as a
Of
GLP-1,
course.
I think about that and we're in such a unique culture that we kind of I don't know how to put it. It's like it's not a fix really. It's more of like an assistant, if you will, right? It's like I'm going to assist this journey by injecting myself with this to help my hunger pains go away. Right. So that's ultimately what happens is
Hmm.
you lose your desire to eat in such a way, right? Maybe not
Hmm.
fully, but such a way. So I'm thinking about that. I'm like, but we're still not getting to the root of the problem. Now, if people utilize those tools in life, just know that's not the only answer. You're still going to put into hard work. There still need to be some changes made. And I know friends who've had those injections and do that
Hmm.
regularly, and still have the issue because mentally they're not fixed. And that's where I want to go with that. It's like, okay, that it doesn't burn fat. It's not a fat burning, calorie burning, tool. It is I'm going to assist you with hunger, and you still have to do the work to not overeat and to not overindulge and to not, you got to exercise, you got to do your thing. So really, we got to fix the mind. We got to fix the mind. That's where it comes up to. The mind has to be fixed. Your environment of food, your upbringing of food, all the things you've learned about food has to change because if you're hungry, there's some particular reason for that. If you're hungry on a consistent basis more than you should be, there's something going on that we need to really try to manage. But as far as my journey, um, rolling into this whole thing, it was such a mental shift for me to really comprehend that I have to be this guy that has to lose some fat. And we're brutal with ourselves. We should be brutally honest with ourselves, but not brutal towards ourselves, right? So I had to come to terms like and I didn't say this back in the day, but I could look back at myself. I was fat. And not only did I hear that from other kids, but I was having issues and I needed a way out of that. And I had to transform my knowledge and understanding of what foods can do for me. Food was consuming me instead of me consuming it. We've heard that quote before, but realistically, that's what was happening in my life. I was a slave to an addiction. On top of that, I had anxiety and panic attacks really, really bad. And so my way to cope with those would be, those M&Ms look really good. Oh, those cinnamon buns, I'll have 3, please. Like I'm all about that life, right? Just give me everything to gorge myself and numb the feelings. And and in school, I was a bigger kid and I would get made fun of, right? Kids would say some mean things, say some cruel things. They would laugh at me. I'd be embarrassed. All the things were happening and everything was spiraling out of control. I became homeschooled because of the anxiety from school. And that's where I really started ballooning up in my weight even more from 14 to 16, actually. And that was quite the time in my life where weight just started coming on and I didn't deal with my issues and it created that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's certainly something that comes up. I hear people, a lot of the obesity medicine clinicians, talk a lot about the incredible results that they see, and it's exciting, right? And I love the idea of giving patients a tool that can really assist them with building their self confidence and their self efficacy. Meaning, they know that they can do the thing that they really deeply desire. But it's interesting when you go back, right? Where does it start? Like, where do you think it started for you? Is it a behavioral thing? Is it a lack of knowledge? Is it something, I think what it becomes that a lot of clinicians don't necessarily take into account, and a lot of people who have never struggled with their weight don't take into account, is that it does become a metabolically sort of self-licking ice cream cone, right? Like your hormones are all out of whack because you have been um, eating and maybe not exercising and doing things that are perpetuating this dysfunctional metabolic state, and then it really is something that the momentum is going in the wrong direction. And so, what are you seeing, I mean, in your own story and as you work with people? How does that start? And, is it something that is hard to reverse at first, but then becomes easier? What does that process look like?
I think it's a really good question. Your environment is where it starts. And I remember as a kid,
Mm.
um, I came from a family in poverty. That's where my upbringing. My parents didn't make a lot of money, and so we would have the nutritious, amazing diet of hot dogs and white breads and pastas and potato chips. You know, all the things. We received assistance for our foods, and we weren't educated on what is healthy and what isn't. We would have a salad at our meals, which is that was good, right? That's nice, but the hot dogs with the white bread and the ice cream after the meal and things like that was my upbringing, and I was used to that. And we made Kool-Aid. I was talking to my wife the other day, like, remember Kool-Aid? Like, we would make that. It was like we would make that all
Yeah.
the time. It's Kool-Aid man really had my heart for a little bit, but it was interesting. That's my type of diet I grew up on, and so that's what I was around. That's what I saw. I wasn't educated except for having a salad to be healthy, but not necessarily what the body should have to be healthy and to operate at optimal level, right? And to balance
Yeah.
hormones, to balance hunger, to balance all the things. So I think it started there. It started with the ignorance towards health and the upbringing of my environment, and where we didn't have a knowledge of what was good and what wasn't. In fact, I believe I started thinking I'm just going to do what feels good, and eating food that drove me to want more of it, like that felt good to me. That was pleasure to me. I was like, this candy, this Snickers, is this good? I need another one because I feel good while I eat it. Like, and you feel high and good for a little bit. That you get that release, that dopamine, like from the chocolate. Like, oh, this is so good. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, you crash, and then you feel like, oh, I just feel like a stuffed bird right now, right? So it's ignorance, my environment. It was out of control. Thoughts towards what makes me feel good. As a young person, I didn't have that. They call that the frontal lobe of the
Yeah.
boys and girls. And boys develop slower in that part, right? And so I didn't have that balancing act in me to say, oh, this probably isn't good for me, until the doctor said you could die. And then as a kid, you're like, that's not good. No, I can't do that yet. I'm too young for this. And then you can start changing. And my parents would try to tell me, I don't want to make them ever sound like, monsters in my life, because they really did care about me and love me, but they were just kind of ignorant in this part. And they wanted to be, hey, I want my son to be happy. And that's not good to enable me. I'm not saying I'm not making excuses for them, but I am saying it's what they knew, and it's with how they parented. Okay, that's where it was, and we have a great relationship today. But yeah, it's amazing to what the habits can do, and how they can really shift your journey if you allow them
Yes.
to in some way.
I want to comment on that just because it's not a unique story, right? The unique part of your story that's worth celebrating and that's so interesting is that you found a way out of that. But I also grew up in a very low income community, and these are the foods that are available. It is the brown and serve rolls that you can get at the bread store, on discount, and the feel good foods. And I as a clinician, I really struggle with the decisions that we're making in not just health policy, but food policy. The lack of, I don't even know that I'm not saying, oh, we need to ban white flour, we need to ban this or that. I'm not against that a little bit, like banning maybe some red dye number 3 in our foods. But when you look at like the active things that we're doing and subsidizing certain crops that, may not be supporting good health in providing, SNAP benefits or, whatever sort of public taxpayer funded benefits to people who, for better or worse, need some help in this way. What are we providing them? Like benefits probably pay for Kool-Aid. They
Yeah.
certainly pay for Coca-Cola. And so I do think that there's like an awareness issue. The education, you talk to people and they say, of course people know what to eat. Do they?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and there's a lack of I think there's a lack of care. There's a lack of wanting to know what these things do to me. I think we sometimes live in denial. I think there's a denial element to us because I think some of us, we live in this place where I feel like, mm, as long as I don't know, as long as I don't understand, like if I don't know what this thing does to me, then I can eat it, right? And it's like I don't think we put together the puzzle pieces that what you put in your mouth today or what you choose to do today will have some form of a consequence, good or bad, for your future. And so if you look at it that way, a bigger picture, it's like, okay, these foods may be consumed because we're not being educated, but are we willing to be educated? Do we really have a desire to know and understand, what does white flour and processed sugar actually do to the body? How do we understand that those are inflammatory markers that get, uptick to your body if you consume those in excess? Did you know that when you consume too much sugar, you're putting your pancreas into overdrive, and your body has an inflammation response to that over time? Did we know that can kill people over time? Like, I don't think people want to know. I think it all
I
comes down to whatever, but I think there's a lack of interest, and it's certainly out there. You post
I
things
don't
on
disagree
Facebook.
with you.
Yeah,
I think this is the evidence is everywhere
yeah.
that
It's
that's true.
it's just like it blows my mind, and you can be a soundboard of hope to a million people, but maybe 100 out of the million will hear you and actually value their life enough to make the decision to change, because now they understand, if I'm gone early in life because of my poor decisions, I'm leaving behind my son, my daughter, leaving behind my husband, my wife, I'm leaving behind my family, my friends, and now there's a hole in their heart. So it becomes this, like, not about me anymore thing for me. That's what really impacted me. It's like, I'm treating my parents like garbage here because I'm choosing to be overweight. I'm choosing to put food in my mouth and gorge myself. I'm choosing to maybe leave this earth early, prematurely, because
Mhm.
of my desire to feed my body. I don't even need this food like this, but I'm choosing it. And it's a wake-up call, because now life is no longer on you, and now the selfishness, and yes, I'm saying this and it might ruffle some feathers, and that's okay, but there's a lot of selfishness in food addiction. You may argue with me on that. But if you truly want to be set free on that, there's help for that. But to say there's no problem, to say there's no issue, to say that I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, there is selfishness involved in that.
I I don't disagree. I from where I sit, I guess just being critical and aware of sort of the environment and what's going on in the healthcare system, in the food system. I look at things like you just said, if you have a platform and you reach a million people, maybe 100 people decide to really hear that. And while that is absolutely a valid point, there's also this this perspective that you really have to recognize that if you hear that truth, right? If you hear someone who says, "Hey, I can, I chose this path. This was the path for me, and there are other paths, right? You can do whatever it is, this behavioral change that you're trying to make." There are 1,000 more voices who make money and and prosper from you not being successful at that behavior change, right? There's a lot of people sort of bringing awareness at this point of, the diseases that you're suffering from right now started 20 years ago, right? The knee replacement that you need is because of the extra 100 pounds that you started carrying 20 years ago. The diabetes, right, didn't start yesterday. And I think that it's a little dark, it's a little pessimistic, but we've got to get to a point where we recognize that the food industry wins when we keep eating. The pharmaceutical industry wins when we keep taking medicine. The medical industry is making money. I'm not saying those individual people that you're interacting with, but as a whole, everyone makes money when you lose that battle in your mind.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that most people are ready to confront that reality.
They might not be. And
Yeah.
that's but the thing is, we want to be the voices that at least they can be heard, right? The voices that are at least out there spilling the truth and talking about these moments that could change a person's life. We don't go out there to bring awareness because we want hey everybody, we just want to be cute and fluffy and we want to tell you guys that everything's so good. We want to be out there shouting from the rooftops, there's the bridge is out ahead. The bridge is out ahead. And there's got to be a way to stop traffic flow so people don't die. And so there's a passion in the hearts of individuals like us who have seen the outcome of ill health choices, who have seen people die prematurely because of poor choices. We want to be a voice, if you will, for those people if they could come back and say something, don't eat that Twinkie anymore, right? We
Yeah.
want to help people. So, yeah, there might be a few far in between who will listen, but our hope is that it begins a movement and one person hears it, their influence, it shares more to more people, they share it with more people, and so on. I really, I'm understanding what you're saying there, and I want to comment on what you're talking about too with the food industry and how we're the guinea pigs.
Yeah.
We're the guinea pigs. And I like cookies like the next guy. I like donuts like the next guy. I like, I'll take some French fries periodically. They don't, they're about 5% of my dietary approach. Case closed on that. Like once a month, twice a month, maybe. But 95% of my dietary approach is whole, healthy food that God has made, created here on this earth that I can have. And that, guess what? That includes, and this is where people don't need to understand, eating healthy can be amazing. It includes healthy proteins. It includes a hamburger. I'm all about those that red meat. I love it. I don't eat it every day, but I love it. I do have it. Chicken, your fish. I mean, it includes all those proteins and eggs. Huge fan of eggs.
Yeah.
Eat those every day. And it includes carbohydrates. And now we're talking to the keto people because now they're going to be like, what? So yes,
Yeah. I
carbohydrates.
mean, well, what did you do? I mean, so, we've been negative, but I could really just stand on that soapbox pretty much all day, um, and whine about it. But what I hear you saying is that, personal responsibility isn't just the negative side of it, right? Like it doesn't just mean this is your fault and you need to do something. It also means that you have the power and the control to live the life you want to live and to do the things you want to do. What did that look like for you? How did you take that first step? What was the first step?
Yeah. That's really good. And that's where I wanted to go with this. We can paint the picture of the reality in front of us and how people, they can ignore and there's repercussions of our choices, but there is also a hope. And so I think it's important to paint the picture of this is where we mostly are right now, but there's also a way out. And it's amazing when I coach people and walk them through the journey. I mean, I get to watch their minds transform. They come at me with a sort of like, give me the quick fix guide. Right? It's like, give
Yeah.
me the quick fix guide. Um, and it's like, it's there. Yeah, I can give you the quick fix guide, but let me just share with you, there's hope out of this where you can develop your own plan and your own methods that work really good for you. And this is where I started my own journey of just kind of, I was listening to some doctors, listening to some therapists and such, and they were sharing with me, here's how to get started, right? And so I started doing the movements they wanted me to do. I just, when I was that large, standing up and sitting back down hurt like
Yeah.
a mother. Okay, so it wasn't easy. So I stood up, sat back down, stood up, sat back down. That was my first activity, and then I had some nurses help me walk like 10 steps, and then I would cramp up in my back and my legs, and I'd have to go sit back down. Now, most people would think, I can't even walk 10 steps without doing this. This is pointless. But my heart was, I just walked 10 steps. I just walked 10 steps. I haven't been able to walk 10 steps in XYZ time. And that thought process motivated me for more change. I got hungry for change because I knew the 10 steps for me, that was a big deal. That was huge. That means my recovery was on its way. And I was in charge and responsible for my recovery to continue or to regress. So I'm going to be like, I'm going to do 12 steps. So I want to just, this is important that we say this because we got to give ourselves some grace and mercy along the way and patience along the way, because we're not going to get it all right the first time around. Like we have perfectionism mindsets, so where we're like, we're going to get everything
For
perfect
sure.
overnight. And it doesn't happen like that. So it took me, this is interesting. My first mile after being, after I was told I weighed 799, my
Mm.
first mile, and I was on oxygen. So I had the oxygen hose and everything. I was walking with that in my house, but I counted my steps, right? And I would put like I had so many steps, and I would put a penny in a jar, and then I go back to my bedroom, come back out, put a penny in a jar, and eventually it took me 66. Was it 66? I forget how many laps it took me, 100 and some probably, but it took me 66 days to complete that mile. That's my first mile completed after I was diagnosed with this obesity issue and
Oh my
everything. It was
gosh.
amazing. 66 days.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Right? You could probably go out and, walk a mile over your lunch break now.
Gosh. Yes.
Maybe several.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And then 33 days is my second mile. I doubled that. And I was like,
Okay.
let's double the encouragement and the motivation here. So I did 33 days. And then it became, I don't have the numbers after that, but like it was shorter and shorter and shorter. And then walking 1 mile in one day was a big milestone. So I say all that just because we need to identify that this is a process, and it's continual progress, and it's
Mhm.
celebrations of the small wins along the way. It's not comparing yourself to the person beside you, a person beside you. It's comparing yourself to you yesterday. And that's what kept me motivated to see changes in my life.
This episode brought to you by Crowd Health. Crowd Health helps you find awesome doctors, negotiate your bills, and fund those bills through our peer-to-peer funding platform for less. Welcome to an easier way to pay for healthcare.
How do you think you were able to approach that from such a young age? I mean, I look at people, our age now, and people struggle with that. I struggle with that.
Yeah.
How do you get people to that place where they can appreciate the small wins?
First off, I had influences in my life that were good influences. I had an occupational therapist. Her name was Melody. She was amazing. She loved to help people, and she took a special interest in me. She'd come to my house, and I would have those services, and she would help me walk around, start cooking again, and things like that. So it was really good to be encouraged by her motivation. But additionally, it was your company and who you hang out with. Like if you got positive people and you're listening to positive stuff and you're reading
Mm.
positive material, the scripture verses for me were a big help. The music that I was listening to was a big help. The people around me were a big help. And then I saw the value in myself through that. And that's when I
Mhm.
started seeing like, all right, Justin's really recovering here. This is amazing. And I took my eyes off of other people. Like I have my friends who are out playing football and doing their thing and playing basketball. And I'm like, I can't compare myself to them. Like I knew that I had a different story, and I set myself apart from people because I'm Justin, they're them. I can't compare, even though my mind wants to go there, but I can't because that sabotages my personal wins along the way. It's really just comes a reality check with yourself, and recognizing the damage that this could do if you compare yourself all the time, and the stress that it brings, and the
Yeah.
stress response that it brings, and all the things. Now, granted, this is me overviewing my life back in those years. In the process of it, it was a process, right? I mean, I didn't just click one day. I'm not compare myself to anybody else. No, that was always going to be an issue. But as I was, like I was saying, the people around me, the things I was listening to, praying, scripture verses, music, good wholesome movies, whatever it was that I could entertain my mind with to get my mind in a better place, I would do that.
So so you said it took you a couple of years to get to the place you were trying to get to. Did you have setbacks, plateaus during that time? How did you manage, and how did your relationship with food and exercise sort of change throughout that time?
Yeah, Tiffany, I was perfect. Tell you what, I had no setbacks. No, just kidding. Like I just wish like life would go like that. So I had some
Would it be nice?
setbacks.
Maybe just once.
Just one time. Like I'm perfect, so no issues over here. So there were setbacks. There were definitely
Yeah.
setbacks, and anxiety and panic attacks I once mastered came back for a season. They weren't as extreme. Food addiction would come back for a season. I had to teach myself not to eat this stuff. I would let myself gain weight. I gained like 60 pounds back one time in the midst of everything. That's a crazy amount of weight to gain back. Like that was over a year and I gained it back. That's how, and the funny thing was, I was fasting from sugar that year. So it wasn't the sugar. It was me just gorging myself on other foods to replace that desire for sugar. So that was an issue. But yeah, I had to lose that weight. So it wasn't easy and definitely some setbacks and definitely some defeated moments and definitely I was tired of being healthy. And that's weird to say. I was
That is
tired of
weird.
eating healthy. I was tired of exercising. I was tired. I'm like, I just want to play video games with my friends and I just want to like
Yes.
sleep in. I just want to eat pizza. So yeah, there were setbacks, but I allowed myself to go through those seasons and I learned just like we all do in life, right? I mean, I'm sure you've had seasons in your life where you had to lesson learned, right? Go through it.
How did you continue to turn those things around and keep the momentum building?
Yeah, I do think, like I said, the voices in my life were helpful. I did have a really good medical professional team on my side. Interesting, like we don't always have to agree with our medical team, right? And
Yep.
they're going to look at studies and they're going to look at things that according to the research that is proven in the medical field, they're going to give you those answers, right? But I also, through them, found that it's not a one size fits all approach, and it actually opened my eyes a little bit. Like, okay, it worked for a season, but the season ended, and now I need to figure out some other things along with this and partnering. I'm not against doctors, not against medical professionals. I really believe 100% that good interest is in mind. But I do think the individual, the patient, we need to be aware of our bodies and know what works for us and what doesn't work for us, and willing to try things if we must, but know how we feel. Listen to your body always. And so I think I had a good team behind me that really impacted me. And then, but it started out with a cardboard and water diet. That's what it felt like. Everything was fat free, low calorie,
Mm.
no focus on protein. Really, it's just like just eat low calorie, and it worked for a little bit. But then I started investigating a little bit and reading and I just started understanding like protein is a good sort that's a good macronutrient to put in my body because not only does it make me feel satisfied and but it also can build muscle. It also can help me with metabolism. It also can, like all the things I read on that, I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm going to start eating more protein and focusing on that. I up my calories and I figured out, is my body going to respond well to this or is it not? And so that's when I had to really adapt to become my own physician, but partnering with my medical team to thrive in that area as well.
That's my favorite thing that you've said, I think, this entire time, because it's what I really want from all of my patients. I know that there are, I don't know, a number of clinicians who are offended by their patients, having their own knowledge, their own thoughts and opinions. And like, I agree that it's difficult sometimes when you have a patient come in and they are decided on a course of action or they have an opinion that, perhaps you disagree with. But my perspective is that patient who's trying to be their own doctor is heavily invested
Mm,
in their health, right?
yeah,
And then what you really have is an opportunity. I have an opportunity to say, Justin, I love that, like, you're researching this and you're looking at this. You
yeah,
mentioned XYZ concern, and, that's valid. But
mhm,
here's why I'm not worried about that. Here's why I still think that, my recommended treatment is like what's best for you. And I think that, when I speak to patients and different patient groups that are maybe suffering from a particular condition or something like that, it literally doesn't matter what the group is, right? If it's a MS group or a cancer group, the answers are the same. The answers are, you go to your clinician, they went to school and did all of these things because they really want to help people. And so it's your job to be honest
yeah,
about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, about what your fears are, about what's holding you back, if you're going to comply, like
yeah.
what your thoughts are, so that you can come to that place where you really can get the help that you need, because no one is looking out for that patient like that patient is. No
Right.
one's looking out for you like you're looking out for you. We
Yeah.
might have like knowledge, sort of subject matter expertise that someone else may not have, but you are the one who benefits when you lose the 600 pounds and you feel
Yeah.
great. And you're also the one who suffers if, a medical professional talks you into something that isn't what's best for you.
Yeah. I agree with that. And you have to be able to stand your ground too. Because I think sometimes as a patient, it's so important to have a good relationship with your primary care physician or your specialists.
Yes.
Because as a patient, you want to be heard, but as a physician, you want to be heard, right? So there's that balancing
Yeah.
act that happens. If the physician is taking time to invest in me, I need to be willing to listen to what they have to say. But the physician also has to be okay with the patient saying, I'm not okay with going that direction, and here's why. And so, like, just and using a very controversial part of our lives
I'm
was when
excited.
is when the vaccinations came out, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it was everywhere that these vaccinations are going to be very, very helpful and will help people from not contracting COVID, but to assist them into recovering in a way that's not going to be so deadly, or improve that. And you try to drown out the voices that are the doom and gloom people, because there are the way far people who are like, everything's going to kill you, so don't do anything, don't blink, don't do anything.
Yeah.
But then you have the people who generally do care, and you have the people who are on the other side saying you need to get this. So it's like, where do you find the magic formula in here, the answer? And it came down to my research as much as I could on the matter. Like, I wasn't a fan of the mandation of everything. Like, okay, work was going to fire you if you don't get vaccinated. That hurt a little bit. I'm like, if you want to get vaccinated, go for it. I'm not going to say never. I'm not anti-vaccine. I was just in that moment. I'm like, I don't think right now is the best time. I personally, just with everything that went on, I don't think it was the best time. And I think we had some good people, good-hearted people potentially trying to help our world, but very quickly. So I was just like, I can't do this right now. I'm not going to do this. And I already had some heart, not issues per se, but just an arrhythmia issue. And then
Hmm.
reading, because and again, not reading everything and believing everything, but enough research has been done, at least in a short term, where it was like, this could mess with heart rhythm for people. And I was just like, I don't want to chance that. And so I went to my work and I said, hey, I'm not going to vouch. I'm not going for this. I don't want this vaccination. So I went to my doctors and asked them if I could have a release, of what do you call that? It was a
An
uh,
exemption, maybe.
exemption. That's the word. Yes, an exemption
Hmm.
from getting a mandatory vaccination at my work, and they wouldn't
Hmm.
do it. They said, you're better off getting it done because that'll actually protect your heart. And we got in some little heated discussions over it, but you're not going to win there. And so I had to just be like, all right, I'm going to hold my ground, and here's why. Me personally, my choice here, I'm going to say I am going to not take part in this vaccination. Well, I got an exemption, a religious exemption, because again, I didn't know what it would do to my body, and I don't want to put something in my body that God created or didn't create. So I was just like, that's not right now. And so I did get the exemption. It did spare my job, but at the same time, I'm just like, that was difficult and stressful. so so that's a prime example of you as the individual making your own decision. And I don't want to play the whole like you should or shouldn't game, but I'm talking about me. I'm like, just didn't sit well with me at that point.
And I think that's true for so many things. I'm active on X, and someone was tweeting about, I believe it was about the GLPs, about the drugs that are like Ozempic and Wegovy, and they said, 20 years from now, we're going to regret that we went down this path, right? And someone said, well, do you have evidence of
Yeah.
that? And the person said, well, not really, but there's no long-term study data, no long-term data on, the risk of this in people who do not suffer from diabetes and yada, yada. Then someone retweets that and they said, oh, well, what long-term data do we have on the carnivore diet, right? And then someone retweets that and they said, well, what long-term data do we have on the low fat? It was just like on and on and on. And, what really struck me in that whole thread was this is true about everything. Like, and I'm not discounting medical knowledge and studies, right? Or even long-term data of things, but this whole idea that somehow we can know what we don't know is somewhat preposterous, like just from the outset of like, we don't have long term data on everything. Life cannot be lived with long term data on everything. But at the same time, you have to recognize that, that just because, the New York Times is up in arms about one particular thing, like for example, they alcohol is on the chopping block this week in the news cycle, right? I mean, I'm not advocating that alcohol is good for anyone, but just saying, right? Like everyone, at this point is like, oh, well, one drink is just as bad as XYZ, right? And it's not.
Yep.
It's just, the perception of what's good for you and what's bad for you, and what the benefit of a pharmacological product, frankly, um, is all skewed, right? And at the end of the day, I'm not saying that particular product was going to be great for you or terrible for you, but at the end of the day, you have to make that choice,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to live in your body
Right.
if the choice was wrong for you. And I do think that there's something to be said about that. There's something to be said about that responsibility.
Yeah, that's good. And personal choices on those matters are important there, and but also being open to hearing the other side and not just being short on your own logic, right? Because there's a lot of pride and ego in our own logic sometimes, and we like to think we're our own. Hey, we know everything. No, you don't. And it's okay to hear other opinions, other stances on things. And even like you want to talk about another item that people need to listen to their body on, and that's the cholesterol hypothesis that was once out there and is still out there, living large, right? Was it the 80s where Ansel Keys did this whole theory on, it's a hypothesis on cholesterol and how the LDL cholesterol is and fat and cholesterol and saturated fat are the reasons why people are getting heart disease and dying prematurely and this and that. Well, then you look at the other side of the spectrum and you see people who are consuming very low fat, who are consuming high carbohydrate from even like high fruits and like potatoes and yeah, packaged foods, of course. And still the rate of heart disease really hasn't gone down, even though there are some specifications or standards by our government, right? Saying
Yeah.
no more, don't have no more than XYZ amount of this. And some people maybe follow that, and yet there's still a chance of heart disease is still prevalent in our country. So I'm thinking to myself, is this really the issue? Now, I know there are some hyper responders to cholesterol because of maybe some from some genetic predisposition they were born with, right? But there's also a part where it's like, is cholesterol really the bad animal that it's said to be? Because there's also different types of cholesterol. There's also different particle sizes of cholesterol. There's also inflammation at play. I mean, you can have a heyday with this and get all like geeked out with it, what I love to do, and understand that some cultures who eat cholesterol and high saturated fats, their heart disease is minimal. It's like not there. But
Yeah.
what are they doing differently? Are they active? Are they consuming non-processed foods? Are they eating, are they eating the egg? Are they using vegetable oils? You can talk about all that and we can go off a rabbit trail with that whole thing. But that's just an example of another one where it's like, my body responds okay to eggs. My cholesterol does not get impacted one way or another. A little bit with LDL, but also my HDL goes up with it. My triglycerides are fairly low, in fact, really low, which is awesome. So I just know, and I've had a particle size test in the past as well, particle size A and B, and it was small and dense, which is better than having, or large and fluffy, which is better than having small and dense particles. And so I have a lot of large and fluffy, and that's from a higher fat, lower, not total low like keto, but lower carbohydrate diet. And exercise. My body responds well. But your body may be a little different. And that's where I wanted to go with that.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point, and it really speaks to all of the things. I wish we disagreed a little more, honestly, but we're just right on the same page there. But what's going to work for you may or may not work for me, and that I think has a lot to do with why you have to be your best advocate, right? Because when we present data to people. I had a conversation with a friend yesterday, and he's been dealing with some pretty severe sciatic pain. Ended up at the orthopedist. Orthopedist recommended some steroid shots in his back, and my friend is like texting me throughout this, these several weeks long episode, and giving me the updates like, hey, how does this sound? It's a new orthopedist. Is this guy crazy? Is he taking care of me? What's the deal? And I get this big, long, fills up the whole screen text yesterday. And he said, well, here's what he said. He said about half of his patients need to come in for a second set, but we don't know which half. And I should make the appointment just in case, but I can cancel it. But for the half that don't need the second set, the effects can last years or sometimes months, right? And so, like, he's telling me this whole story, this narrative, and I was so satisfied with the care that he was getting, because if we're honest, right, if we actually have enough time with our patients to really explain the full spectrum of expectations, that is what it looks like, right? The full spectrum isn't like, well, this isn't good, take this drug. The full spectrum is, well, this isn't good for, a subset of this population. And this drug helps this subset of that group, right? I mean, it's much more complex than that. And I think that because of the, different factors of, time that we have with our patients, the specialization that we do, your cardiologist maybe isn't looking at all of the other medications that you might be on, like your primary care would. There are a lot of factors that go into why those conversations aren't as good as they could be. But I think the variable that you have control over is the questions that you ask, the healthy skepticism that you bring to your appointments and to your life and to your choices. And, if you're on the keto diet because that's what your best friend's cousin's sister was very successful on, and you're doing all of the things and you're having, setback after setback after setback, but then, you switch to something else that's more reasonable for you and that's working for you, then that's the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's good. And I think going back to the physician field for a minute, I really would highly, it'd be amazing if a physician would ask the first question, what is your diet like? Instead of let's try to figure this out, what's going on in your body. It's like, what got us to this point? What's your diet like? Would that change some of these potential prescriptions that are being given to these patients? Would that change the relationship? Would that change the education of the patient? Would this help? And some docs may do that, right? And it's good. But if we had a log of what we consume and we see, Pop-Tart and donut for breakfast, a bag of chips and a soda for lunch. This is a box macaroni and cheese and fish sticks for dinner, soaked in soybean oil, and my dressing was vegetable oil and vinegar. Okay, maybe we can see why things are not healthy. And if we change that first and do some healthier education there, maybe there's a different outcome with the patient, and they'll be happier because now they don't have side effects of a medication and their life is getting better,
And vice versa, right? A patient can come in and say,
Right.
look, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you help me sort out? Like, I tried to run. Maybe that's the only exercise that I think you can do, right? I tried to run, but my knees hurt. And then, I'm tired and I'm out of breath. And so I just don't know what to do. Can you help me? And I think even being willing to show up at an appointment and ask that question you win no matter what the answer is, because maybe the answer is they don't have time to talk to you about it. They wish they could, but it's not going to happen. Well, now you know, right? And you can go somewhere else for that help or that education. Maybe they are dismissive and rude
Mhm.
to your question because they don't know and they're self-conscious, or whatever the reasons are.
Yeah.
That gives you information. Maybe they say, are you kidding? Did you know that you can just walk for 3 times as long and that should be just as effective for you? I don't know what the answers are,
Sure.
but asking the question, I think, gets you to the next step.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's responsibility on both ends. I really that's a good point that you brought up
Yes.
there too, because I think as we look at professionals, we think, and I can say as a coach, I think people expect, give me the answers. Like, you should be asking me these questions, where now the person has to take, this is really good that you said that. The person has to take full responsibility of their own health to try to figure out the answers as well. If you were diagnosed with a deadly disease, you're gonna and you went to a, say you had cancer and you went to a cardiologist, it's probably not the
Hmm.
best bet, right? Ask the questions to the right potential of a specialist. And so I would say, as the individual, I need to pursue those avenues that are going to give me the answers I need, and do the studying, do the research, ask the questions, and take responsibility and ownership of your own health. And I think we have a problem with that in our country, is we blame everything else for our health. And I love it, just opened up a new light for me. I feel like a ding, like something went off, and I know we're
Yay.
probably getting over time here, but it's just kind of crazy to me how we always pass responsibility. It was McDonald's fault. It was, oh, my spouse bought this for dinner, so I got to have the pizza. I mean, I have to. You know what? It's cold outside. I can't go for a walk. This thing doesn't. I'm aching today, so that means I can't do another. There's no way I can exercise. Those are excuses. You still can exercise. Go to the pool. It's easier on the joints. Like, you don't have to worry about feeling like you're hitting high impact on anything. You don't have to eat the pizza. Nobody twisted your arm and said, you eat the pizza right now. No, nobody did. You don't have to do that. You can have one slice and something else on the side. You don't have to. And it's simply lack of ownership to our own health. And so I'm encouraging our listeners right now who are listening in, look at your health like it's like this is your full-time job. You get one body, one life, and how are you going to treat it? And you need to have grace on yourself. You need to be patient, not be this perfectionist mindset person, but also be open to exploring and having patience along the way, and being okay of failing and picking your ball back up and going again another round, and not staying down. Like, you have to have this as a journey. A journey is full of wins and losses. A journey is full of learning and unlearning. A journey is what you need to go on in order to transform your life. And so, if you haven't started your journey, or maybe you're pondering that, you need right now to look at your life and explore it and say, what's my first step to right now? Not tomorrow, right now. What can I do?
And on that note, if someone looks at their life, they say, oh, I asked my doctor, or they don't know. I went on YouTube. There were 16,000 different diets that were recommended to me. I've never exercised before. I don't know how to go to the gym. I can't afford a membership where there's a pool. What is that? What is something simple that they could do that would be a nice first step
I love
to
that
take
question.
ownership?
Love that question. So I think we have the comparison of like, oh, exercise has to look like this, and healthy diets have to look like this. And so we think all the gurus are doing it, so we got to do it too. And just like you said, like, but no, this is some of my daily habits. I have a standing desk that I use right now. I'm standing, and I'm standing on a workout mat, so that I'm not like getting a lot of, my varicose veins are going to pop out of nowhere, right? So I'm able to get some cushion under there, so I can do some calf raises just standing here as we're talking. I have weights, light weights in my room, so during mid conversation, maybe I'm on my computer doing work, I'm gonna take a 30-second break and just do some bicep curls. I might do some shoulder presses. I might just do some things. Look up beginners YouTube beginners exercises you can do in your chair. I mean, you can tighten, literally some easy things to do. Tighten your glutes and release. Tighten your glutes and release. That's an easy, it starts getting blood flow. That can stimulate metabolic rate. That can get you burning some calories. You're going to work those muscles and get a booty. Like, why not? Right? It's a benefit. So things like that, a roll for the walk. Yeah. There's a lot of things you can do.
It can be mental training that turns into bigger and bigger
Yeah.
wins.
Yeah. It's
So what are you working on now? I know you have a book. I haven't read the book. I ordered it. I have it sitting on my bookcase. Um, but what's next for you?
It's insane. There's a lot of things happening. So thank you for asking. And just as you are doing, we're trying to be voices out there, of an example of change to people who are probably looking all over the place for answers and just don't know where to find them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are in the works right now. We do have a podcast called 600 Pounds Down. It's birthed out of my weight loss story. My partner and I, his name is George. He's my co-host actually, and him and I, we've lost a total of like 720 pounds altogether. And
Wow.
so we're working on this thing together to really bring a message of hope to other people. So we have a podcast going on. We drop an episode pretty much every week, every other week, just a regular guests. On there as well. And of course, equipping people with some answers, practical steps, really. We like to geek out, but there's practical steps. I promise you that. Books are being created. I'm talking like coaching programs. Like there's a lot of things going on in my world to help people. I've coached probably close to 1,000 people in my life, pretty close, like 800 maybe potentially, but I'll say close to 1,000. And I was able to change and help many, many people. And I still work on that journey. I still coach people, walk them through a journey of health and wellness and inspiration and encouragement so they can change a lot of things, But I'm very, very active on socials. Anybody can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, TikTok for now, all the
Yeah.
places. So whatever you
I
can.
mean, you
Yeah.
got a couple more days on
Yeah.
that one. All right. I have one last parting question, and I wish it was more exciting,
Yep.
but here it is. What do you think about using DEXA scans?
I think they're cool. Anything that can, and those are the scans that kind of show, does that show your like body fat and like
Yep.
yes,
Yep.
those are amazing. There's a couple other tests and scans out there like InBody and eVolt that
Yep.
are very similar. I don't know.
So our sponsor is Crowd Health, and they are providing DEXA scans for their members so that they can just sort of know what their visceral fat levels are and know what everything's like. So we're going to be doing an episode, maybe a deep dive. I might go get a DEXA scan.
That's awesome.
But I'm just curious, right? Because I'm sure you get asked questions about tracking and all of this, on a regular basis.
Yeah. And the truth is, let's look at our body weight. Our body weight mass number is made up of a lot of different elements, right? Your body water percentage, it's made up of your visceral fat, your subcutaneous fat, it's made up of muscle, skeletal muscle, right? I mean, there's a variety of what that looks like. And so those scans help you identify how much of my body is fat, how much of it is body water, how much of it is body fat and muscle. Like we kind of go all over the place with that, and it gives you a better idea. And the good news is when you start becoming healthier, there's something to be motivated towards, right? I want that muscle to go up and that body fat to go down. So they're great.
Yeah, I love it. It's been, I've been doing them regularly for, 4 or 5 years now. And that's pretty much the only reason, right? Like it doesn't change that much, but it changes the way that I think about the exercise I'm doing. So
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. That's good.
All right. Well, Justin, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited about it again. It sounds like the go-to message for if you want to do something is they could listen to your podcast.
Yes.
And they're going to be a continual weekly supply of ideas there. But I certainly wish you all the best on your mission. We are on parallel adjacent missions. And I really believe that, no one's coming to save us. And we've got to save ourselves. And I think that community and the sharing of ideas and support and love is how we're going to do it. So
you got it.
Thanks for joining.
Said it better than that. Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah. Thanks, Justin.
This has been the Healthcare Liberty Lab. Thank you to our listeners and our sponsor, Crowd Health, for making this possible. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, be it Substack, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or somewhere else. We're glad to have you with us on this mission to rethink healthcare together.